Hello, welcome back to our tutorial series. From this video we will start understanding about array. So in programming language, an array is a fundamental data structure which used to store collection of elements or items, collection of items of homogeneous element, or we can say heterogeneous element. Okay, so let's try to understand what is array now. So in our real world we have different types of programming language, and based on the programming language the implementation of the array can be different. But let's understand that what is array in programming language. So in programming language, an array is a fundamental data structure. Okay, so this one is the data structure and used to store collection of items. Collection of item means it can store integer, it can store string value, it can store object, okay, and which can be similar data type in lower level programming language, or for example, or in a mid level programming language like C. They used to store the data which is having the same data type. But in modern programming language now we can store the different types of values or different types of data type inside the array. So that is the heterogeneous data. Okay, and it is important that it can store the data under a single name. For example, if you want to store an integer value, then you have to specify integer a equals to 12 like this. Okay, but if you want to store multiple items in a single variable name, then there is a possibility you should use the array. Okay, now let's move to the next point. Here in this example or in this picture you can see that we have a block like this one, or we can say these are cell. So inside all this cell you can insert your data. Okay, for example, if you want to store the roll number of students, then you can store 1 2 3 4 5 like this one. If you want to store their examination score, then also you can store all those score inside all these blocks or compartments. So easily we can say it's like a box with compartments, where each compartment hold one element and can be accessed using the unique identifier called index. So in this particular cell it is having one index, this one also having one index, this one also having one index, this one also having index. Likewise, if there will be multiple elements you will be storing inside the array, then for each and every element there should have a unique identifier that is called the index. So by using the index, value can be accessed. By index you can access the value of those elements which are present in this particular box. Now let's discuss about one characteristics of array, that is the type of the element or the data type of element. So in data type of element means it can store the homogeneous types of data, or it can store the heterogeneous types of data. So homogeneous means all the data will be the same type. Heterogeneous means the array will contain different types of value. Different types of means it can store integer, it can store string as well as object. So these things can store. So if the data will be same type, then it will be homogeneous. If the data will be different types, then it will be heterogeneous. For example, here you can see that we want to store the exam score. So this one you can see all the values are in the integer format. Okay, so that's why it's a homogeneous. And if you want to access this particular element, we can access it via the index. Okay, so for this particular element the index will be 0, for this one the index will be 1, likewise for this one 2, for this one 3, this one 4, for this one 5, for this one it will be 6. This one is the homogeneous. So for the first element the index will be start with 0, and the last one you can see the index is 6. Now in the similar fashion, if you want to store the fruits, list of fruits, then it will be a homogeneous, because we are storing here all the elements, those are strings, right, and all are fruits. That's why it's a homogeneous list, and we can access apple with the index value 0, as well as for the last element pineapple you can access this particular element with the index 6, and in middle you can see for banana index is 1, for orange 2, mango 3, strawberry 4, and grapes 5. With this index you can access all these fruits. So don't worry, we'll talk about all the coding concept, and I'll show you how you can access all this element through the index. But at this point of time, just try to understand what is array and what type of values, what type of data we can store inside our array. Okay, now let's talk about example of heterogeneous array. So here you can see that this is the 0th index of the array, and we are storing apple here. So this one is the 0th index. You can see there is the first index, okay, and we are storing it here 10. It means the data type of apple and data type of 10 will be different. This will be the string, this will be integer, and this will be true. That means it's a boolean data type, right? Here you can see that we have a 3.56, that is real value or floating point number, and here in this cell in the 4th index it is storing one object. Okay, so in some programming language we can store object, we can store function inside an array. Okay, so we'll talk about all this concept in the respective programming language, but as a whole, as a concept of the data structure, you have to understand that inside an array we can store different types of data. So here it can be object, it can be real value, it can be boolean value, or it can be a function, okay, or it can be a pointer, as well as in the 5th index you can see that we are storing grape, and in 6th index we are storing the pineapple. So this one is the example of heterogeneous array, because all the data you can see here, that is the heterogeneous, that is the different types of data is actually storing inside the array. That's why it's an heterogeneous array. Now let's take an example in which programming language we use the homogeneous and which programming we can use the heterogeneous array. So here is our example. So in the left side you can see the language with the primary homogeneous array. So in C programming language, if you already know about C programming language, you know that in C programming language we use to store the data which is actually homogeneous type, right, as well as in C++ and Java. And in modern programming language, these languages are more flexible of array handling. For example, in Python you can store heterogeneous data, right? In JavaScript you can store heterogeneous type of data, in Ruby as well. Now let's talk about another characteristics, that is the index of an array. So index of an array can be two type. It can be 0th index or 1 index. So if we'll go back to our previous example, here you can see that our index is starting from 0, right? It will start from 0 and it will increase 1 by 1. But some programming languages are there which actually starts from 1 and then it will be 2, then after that 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So you have to understand that few programming languages are there for which the index will start from 0, and few programming languages are there which actually start from 1. So based on these characteristics, we can say that index of an array can be two type, 0 index and 1 index. So when the array will start with 0th index, then it will be called as a 0 indexed array, and if the array will start with 1, then it will be called as 1 indexed array. So we have to remember this point, right? Now let's move to an example of this concept, that give me some example of 0 index programming language and 1 index programming language. Okay, so here you can see in the left side Python, Java, C C++, JavaScript. So all these programming language are zero indexed, means all the array concept here starts with 0. In the right side you can see for MATLAB, Leo, Julia, APL, Fortran, for all this programming language the index start from 1. That is why this programming language are called as one index array programming language, and these are zero index. Okay, so I hope now it's clear. Now let's move to one other characteristics, that is the size of an array. The size of an array can be fixed size of an array can be resizable. It means at the runtime, when your program will execute in the runtime environment, that time you cannot resize the size of the array for few programming language, and for few programming language the size of the array can be resizable at the runtime. So there are few programming language at the time of writing coding you have to specify the size of the array. That means you have to specify 10, 12 or 13, this fixed range. But in some programming language you don't have to specify that. You can assign at the time of the runtime, or you can change the size of the array at runtime. So those programming languages size of the array will be resizable. So if you want to take examples, so here is our example in case of C programming language, Java, C++, Fortran. So these are all fixed size array, and for Python, JavaScript, Ruby, PHP. So in this case of programming language you can resize the size of the array at the runtime. Okay, so this is the example. So I hope now it's clear that what is array, and three different characteristics I have explained in this particular session. In the next sessions we will be trying to understand more concept of array, and we will dive into the coding. So thanks for watching this video. See you in the next one. Till then, take care. Bye bye.